He thought pushing her away would save her life, until he saw his baby on the ultrasound screen. Now the most feared mafia boss is willing to burn the world just to protect the family he never knew he had. Love created a weakness, but revenge just made him unstoppable. Watch till the end. Ava Carter stepped into the grand hall of the secret charity gala. Her heart raced beneath her composed exterior. Tonight could decide her entire future. Investors, power, escape from financial collapse. She needed this partnership like oxygen. The venue shimmered, chandeliers dripping with cold diamonds. Politicians shook hands with criminals disguised in elegance. Every laugh sounded like a lie. Every smile hid a threat. Ava held her clutch tighter. She didn't belong here, but desperation was stronger than discomfort. Her eyes scanned the room for her potential investor. Instead, they found him, Dominic Knight. The name alone made Manhattan tremble. The youngest mafia boss in America, a man who didn't rule with popularity, but with fear. He walked in like he owned gravity. Every head bowed, every voice silenced. His presence stole all oxygen from the room. A tailored black suit hugged his powerful frame, his jaw sharp enough to cut diamonds. Those blue eyes, glacial, unreadable, looked like they'd seen death and made peace with it. Ava froze where she stood. Something primal pulsed in her chest. Fear and fascination, equal, dangerous. Dominic continued surveying the hall. Then his gaze landed on her. She didn't look away, couldn't look away. For a moment, everything else vanished. No gunmen.no, criminals.no risk, just the question in his eyes. Who are you? He moved toward her, steps calm, measured, predatory. Ava swallowed hard. Her business plan suddenly felt like a paper shield, but she refused to tremble, refused to show fear. Dominic stopped inches from her, close enough for her to feel the heat of his power. You're the first person here who isn't pretending, he said quietly. His voice carried authority and curiosity. Ava blinked. I didn't expect flattery from the king of this place. King, he repeated, a cold smirk touching his mouth. No, kings get crowned. I took everything I have. She held his stare. You don't know anything about me. He stepped closer, lowering his head slightly. Oh, but I do. His eyes grazed over her poised stance. You're terrified. Then he noticed her steady hands. But you're forcing fear to behave. Her pulse jumped. He saw right through her. Her armor was paper thin under his gaze. I'm here to secure an investor, she replied firmly. No hidden motives, no criminal intentions. Dominic tilted his head. In this room, survival is a crime. Ava tried to breathe steadily. I can handle myself. That's what people say. Before this world eats them whole. His jaw tightened, as if the thought angered him. She didn't know why her existence mattered to him, but his attention felt like being marked by fate. And fate could be cruel. A server passed by. Dominic plucked 2 glasses of champagne, gave her one. Drink. It slows the fear down. She didn't want it. She took it anyway, because refusing him felt more dangerous. As she sipped, Dominic leaned close enough that she felt his breath on her ear. I don't trust anyone. His tone was a confession wrapped in threat. But you, I want to understand. A chill crawled up her spine. Why her? Why tonight? Before she could answer, Dominic's eyes sharpened. A sudden flicker of wariness. A tiny metallic click echoed above them, barely noticeable, but he noticed. His expression changed, calm turning into lethal awareness. Don't move, he whispered. Ava froze. The room felt suspended in silence. Then crack, a bullet tore through the chandelier chain. Glass exploded like falling stars. Screams shattered the calm. Dominic reacted faster than reflex. He grabbed Ava's waist and threw her to the ground, shielding her with his own body. They crashed behind a marble column, his arm locked protectively around her head. His heartbeat hammered against her ear, fierce, alive, wild. Panic erupted throughout the gala. Men pulled guns. Guards formed walls. Chaos roared. Ava gasped, trembling. What is happening? Dominic's eyes burned with fury. You were standing beside me. His grip tightened. That's enough reason to die. Her blood turned to ice. I don't understand. You don't have to, he snapped. I'll handle the devil who dared to aim at what's mine. Ava stared, stunned by his words. What's mine? Dominic rose to his knees, still shielding her. A red targeting laser skimmed across the column. The sniper hadn't left. Dominic looked at her, an emotion she couldn't name behind his eyes. Stay under me, he ordered. I won't let anyone touch you. Why? You don't even know me, she whispered, voice cracking. His gaze locked to hers, a promise forged in darkness. I don't need to know you to protect you. Another metallic click above. Another second stretched into eternity. Dominic pressed her closer. Get ready to run when I say. Ava nodded, adrenaline crashing in her veins. He glanced up, calculating. The predator was fully awake. Then his hand slipped to his gun. He whispered, now. She barely moved an inch before bang. The bullet hit inches from her head. Sparks exploded from the marble. Dominic swore through his body entirely over hers. Ava's scream died in her throat. The world around them blurred, but one truth cut through the chaos. Someone wanted them dead, and Dominic Knight was the only thing keeping her alive. His voice dropped to a terrifying calm. They just made the biggest mistake of their life. He stood, gun drawn, eyes locked on the balcony above, hungry for vengeance. Ava crawled backward, breath shallow. The chandelier flickered desperately above, holding by a whisper. Dominic looked back at her just long enough for fate to strike. The weakened chandelier chain snapped. The massive crystal structure plunged, heading straight for Ava. She had no time to move, no time to scream. Dominic's eyes widened and he sprinted toward her as the world shattered in blinding light. Will Dominic reach her in time? Who fired the shot? Who wants Ava dead? And why? The night air hit Ava as they stepped out of the galas, chaos, sharp and cold, carrying the echo of gunfire and broken glass. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement, a rhythm she didn't control. Dominic's hand brushed hers instinctively as he guided her to the waiting black car. It wasn't a touch of intimacy, not yet. It was protection, heavy and unyielding. You were targeted because you were near me, he said without looking at her. The words fell like ice. Ava stiffened. She didn't need protection, she told herself. Yet, her stomach betrayed her with nervous knots. She glanced at him, Dominic Knight in the driver's seat, expression unreadable. The city lights flickered across his jawline, sharp and threatening. He hadn't smiled once, and that terrified her as much as it intrigued her. You're assuming I'm in danger, she said cautiously. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled against her clutch. I don't know anything about you or your world. You already know too much, he replied, his tone low and measured. His eyes flickered to hers, piercing through every defense she had built. And now you're here, with me, Ava swallowed. Distrust was ingrained. Powerful men like him didn't show kindness without strings, yet tonight, he had shielded her from bullets. Was that enough to make her consider him differently? They arrived at her apartment, a modest building in contrast to the luxury surrounding them. Dominic didn't let go of her arm until the elevator doors closed. Inside the small, quiet space, the city's chaos melted away, and for a moment, Ava saw him differently, not the boss, not the killer, but a man carrying a storm inside him. You don't have to like me, he said softly, leaning against the wall. You only have to survive this night. She met his gaze, and for the first time, she felt something unfamiliar. Vulnerability. Why me? She asked, almost whispering. Why care at all? Dominic's jaw tightened. I don't know how to love without destroying, he admitted, voice heavy with truth. She blinked. No one had ever said that to her so openly. It wasn't an excuse, it was a warning. Maybe you just never loved the right person, she said softly, surprising even herself. He stared at her, blue eyes sharp and unreadable. A flicker of something, admiration, passed across his face. Days passed in the blink of an eye, each meeting shrouded in secrecy. They began a rhythm neither dared to name. Private rooftop dinners overlooking the city's glowing chaos. Silhouettes of two people, sharing stories they would never tell the world, secrets whispered in the dark, laughter, hesitant at first, slowly settling into comfort. Dominic rarely touched her, not because he didn't want to, because he feared what his hands might do to someone fragile. Ava noticed, and it hurt her in a way she couldn't explain, to be wanted and feared at the same time. He taught her to navigate danger with silence. She taught him to pause to see color in a world drenched in shadows. Together, they balanced a dangerous tightrope. But each step closer felt like stepping into a fire he might not survive. One evening, on the rooftop overlooking Manhattan's endless lights, he confessed, "I don't know how to love without destroying." Ava's heart stuttered. "I already said maybe you just never loved the right person," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. He laughed dark, low, a sound that made her skin tingle. "You might be the first person I'd be willing to destroy for," he whispered. The nights grew longer, their meetings riskier. Each time Dominic drove her home, shadows followed them like predators. Yet the pull between them became undeniable. They existed in a fragile bubble of danger and trust, and every time it broke, it reminded them how sharp the edges of their worlds truly were. Ava began noticing small cracks in his armor, the way his fingers twitched when he was angry, the way his eyes softened when she laughed, the almost imperceptible tension when she spoke of dreams outside of his world. For the first time, Dominic Knight looked human to her, dangerous, yes, but painfully human. One night, as the city slept beneath them, she dared to ask, "Do you ever imagine a life beyond this?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the skyline as if weighing the impossible. "I tried once," he finally said, "then I realized the world wouldn't allow it. Not for me, not for anyone close to me." Ava's heart ached for the man behind the monster. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered. His eyes finally met hers. "You should be," he said, voice low, but softer than before. "And yet, you're not." The tension between them shifted, electricity threading through every word, every glance. They didn't kiss, they didn't need to. The space between them burned with what they both refused to name. Then, the moment fractured. His phone buzzed sharp and insistent. Dominic's hand froze over the device. He glanced at her, and for the first time, something dark flickered across his expression. A shadow of his true world intruded. He answered in a whisper, "Boss?" The words on the other end hit him like a bullet. "She knows too much." Dominic's face tightened, his jaw locked. The storm he'd tried to hide now roared openly. Ava watched him, realizing for the first time the danger of being near him wasn't just the enemies outside, it was the ones who already knew her presence could change everything. Dominic's hand tightened around his phone. "You stay here," he said to her, voice cutting through the rooftop's quiet. "Stay, or you die knowing too much." Ava's breath caught. Her heart raced, not from fear alone, but from the undeniable truth that she had already stepped into his world, a world from which there was no turning back. The night wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of danger, blood, and inevitability. Dominic's eyes scanned the skyline, calculating, cold, merciless, a flicker of red, someone watching them from the shadows. He didn't look back at Ava. His mind was already planning retaliation, a strike she couldn't see, and yet, a part of him hesitated, because she had stepped too close, because she had changed everything. The city lights blinked, a siren wailed in the distance. The danger wasn't coming, it was already here. Ava's fingers brushed against the cold railing. She realized that nothing in her life had prepared her for this. Not wealth, not ambition, not survival, nothing. Dominic's voice, low and urgent, broke her trance. "Remember my words. Don't move, don't speak, and whatever happens, survive. You are my responsibility now." A shadow shifted along the rooftop edge. The faint glint of metal caught the moonlight. Dominic's eyes narrowed. Ava's breath hitched. The truth was clear. They were being watched, and whoever was out there knew exactly who she was. The shadow stepped forward, a silenced gun aimed at Ava. Dominic's hand twitched toward his weapon, but before he could act, a shot rang out. Someone else had arrived first. The night erupted into chaos, and Ava realized she had no idea who to trust, not even in Dominic's arms. Who fired the shot? Who's after Ava? And will Dominic be able to protect her from the enemies closing in, or has being near him already doomed her? The city below was alive with neon, sirens, and shadows, but Dominic Knight cared little for the chaos beneath. Tonight, his focus was singular. Ava Carter. He had ignored every warning, ignored every whispered threat in the underworld, ignored the sharp advice of his closest men, because she was the only one he could not let go. Ava sat quietly in the car as they drove through the empty streets. Her hands rested on her lap, fingers lightly trembling. The adrenaline of being hunted was still fresh, coursing through her veins, yet beside Dominic, she felt safe, a dangerous, intoxicating safety that made her question every choice she had ever made. "You trust me?" he asked, eyes on the road, voice low and serious. Ava hesitated, then nodded. "I have to. You're the only way I survive this." Dominic didn't smile. He rarely smiled, but his jaw relaxed slightly, almost imperceptibly. "Good," he murmured, "because I'm bringing you fully into my world. No halfway measures, no safety nets. You either stand with me or—" He didn't finish. The threat hung in the air, heavier than words. Hours later, in the privacy of his penthouse, he finally told her everything: the enemies waiting to ruin him, the betrayals woven into his empire, the men who would kill without hesitation for power, revenge, or fear. Dominic's voice was calm, clinical even, but each revelation carried the weight of a battlefield. Ava listened, absorbing every detail, her chest tightened, mind racing. The reality of his life was darker than anything she had imagined, and yet, she didn't step back, she didn't falter. "You're insane," she finally whispered. Dominic's blue eyes pierced hers. Unflinching, "I know," he said simply, "and yet, I choose you." The words felt like fire in her veins. She had expected distance, danger, perhaps even rejection, but he had chosen her despite the war surrounding him, despite the enemies lurking in the shadows. Their wedding was quiet, not a fairy tale. No flowers, no fanfare, no applause, just two people, one battle-hardened, one resilient, binding themselves together against the world. It was a pact, not romance, a commitment to survive. Ava watched him exchange vows in that dimly lit room. She saw the ruthlessness hidden beneath his sharp features, the calculation in every movement, and yet, for her, that same man softened. She became the truth he hid from the empire, the one part of him untainted by violence or fear. Dominic's hands were steady on hers, his voice was firm, controlled, yet there was a subtle vulnerability. "You will never regret standing by me," he promised. Ava's heart ached. She didn't know if she believed the words, but she believed him. Life together was a delicate rhythm, mornings spent in silence, observing each other, nights filled with whispered confessions over city lights. Ava learned the way he moved, the way he thought. She learned to anticipate danger before he even saw it, and in return, Dominic began to rely on her insight, her calm judgment. They were inseparable in a world where attachment was a liability. Each glance carried understanding, each touch, unspoken reassurance, each decision, life or death, and yet, danger never rested. Enemies didn't forget, they watched, they plotted, and they waited. One evening, after a rare quiet night together, Ava returned home from a meeting. The streets were eerily silent, a thin mist curling along the asphalt. She reached her doorstep, shoulders stiff with unease, and froze. There was a note pinned to the door, handwritten, simple. Ava's fingers trembled as she read the words aloud. "A queen makes a king weak." Her heart skipped. She turned the note over. Nothing else. No signature, no explanation. The blood drained from her face. She could feel the weight of its warning in her bones. Someone had been watching them. Someone had noticed her. Someone wanted Dominic distracted, vulnerable, Ava's instinct screamed at her to run, but she didn't move. Her eyes searched the shadows. The streets, the windows, there was no one, yet the threat was tangible. Alive. Minutes passed, stretching into hours. Dominic wasn't home yet, she called. But the line went to voicemail. Panic rose like wildfire, her chest constricted. Someone was testing them. Someone was bold enough to taunt a mafia king by threatening his wife. When Dominic finally returned, the note was clenched in his hand. His eyes were dark, dangerous, storming with unspoken fury. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he circled the room, assessing, analyzing every creak of the floor, every shadow, every reflection in the glass. He accounted for it. Finally, he spoke, low and deadly. "She knows I'm human," he said. Ava's heart skipped a beat. His hands were trembling slightly, barely perceptible, but the storm behind his gaze was clear. "No one threatens my family," he continued, "and no one does it and lives to see another day." Ava reached for him, voice soft. "Who could do this?" Dominic shook his head. "I don't know yet, but I will find out. And when I do..." His words trailed off, leaving only the promise of violence. The weight of their world pressed down, heavier than ever. Ava realized that love in Dominic's world was not soft, gentle, or easy. It was a war every day, every moment, every breath. And now, the first strike had landed. Dominic's eyes met hers, fierce and unwavering. "You stay inside tonight," he ordered. "I'll handle this. No one touches you. No one. Understood?" Ava nodded, but inside, fear clawed at her chest. She had already walked into a world far darker than she had imagined, and now the enemy had made its move. Outside, the mist thickened, the city seemed to hold its breath. Every shadow became a potential threat. Every whisper of wind carried danger. Ava clutched Dominic's hand. For the first time, she realized how fragile safety could be, how close they were to losing everything. The night was quiet to quiet, and then the soft, almost imperceptible click of a lock being tampered with. Dominic's head snapped toward the door, his body stiffened, every muscle coiled for action. Ava's pulse thundered in her ears. She felt the world shrink to the space between them. The enemy had arrived. Who is trying to break Dominic's empire through Ava? Will Dominic protect her in time, or has the underworld already infiltrated their sanctuary? And can love truly survive in a world ruled by guns, betrayal, and shadows? The city was quiet, almost unnervingly so. Dominic sat in his office, the skyline glowing behind him, neon bleeding into the shadows of the room. Every wall, every frame, every detail whispered control, his control. Yet tonight, that control felt brittle, shattered. The messages had come in one by one, encrypted. Deliberate evidence of betrayal, names of men he trusted, men who had lived in the shadows of his empire for years, and at the center of their plan, Ava. She had unknowingly stepped into a war that even he had only managed to contain with skill, ruthlessness, and fear, and now they wanted her to break him, to manipulate the king through the one thing he never showed weakness for. Dominic's hands clenched the edge of the desk. He hadn't felt rage like this in years, not the cold, precise, calculated kind that promised retribution. He closed his eyes, breathing slowly, forcing himself to think, not act, because every decision now was life or death. Ava waited in the penthouse, unaware of the storm gathering just beyond the walls. She paced, heart fluttering within knees. Dominic had been silent all day, distant, sharp, unreadable. Even the small smiles, the rare moments of tenderness, were gone. Something was wrong. When he finally entered, his eyes were dark, unreadable. No warmth, no explanation, just the intensity of a man on the brink of a war he would fight alone. "Dominic," she began, voice soft, trembling slightly. He didn't answer, not yet. Instead, he moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back, gaze fixed on the city that never slept. "I have to leave," he said finally. The words were clipped, Cold, Ava froze, heart hammering. What do you mean? He turned slowly, eyes meeting hers, but there was nothing familiar in them, no questions. He said, you need to go. Now, Ava's stomach dropped. You can't just send me away. Her voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. I can, he said, voice steady, merciless, and I will. Every instinct screamed at her to fight, to beg, to demand the truth, but Dominic didn't hesitate. He had made a decision, one colder than the steel of the guns that protected him. You won't understand now, he continued, but one day, you will. I'm keeping you alive. That's all that matters. Ava shook her head, tears blurring her vision. You're abandoning me, she whispered, but Dominic only stepped closer, a hand brushing her cheek, gentle, fleeting, almost human. I'm saving you, he said. No one else can. Not them, not me, not anyone. The ride to the safe location was silent. Ava's mind raced with disbelief, fear, and heartbreak. The city lights passed like a blur, mocking her confusion. Every heartbeat screamed betrayal. She wanted to turn back. To run. To demand answers, but Dominic's words echoed. No questions, no arguments. Survival comes first. When she arrived at the nondescript apartment, Dominic handed her a small bag. Everything you need, he said. No kisses, no promises, no warmth, only the weight of his absence. Ava stood frozen as he left. The car door slammed. The sound echoed like a gunshot in her chest. She felt the world collapse around her. Hours passed. Her hands trembled as she unpacked the small bag. Everything he had left was practical. Clothes, money, instructions. No explanations. No reassurance. Just survival. She sank onto the floor, wrapping her arms around herself. Tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Her chest felt heavy, her heart shattered in ways she hadn't thought possible. Then, nausea hit, sudden, violent, undeniable. She rushed to the bathroom, collapsing to her knees, vomiting, trembling, the world tilting around her. Her doctor arrived hours later, rushing her to the hospital after she collapsed a second time. Pale, exhausted, and scared, Ava clutched the doctor's hand. Please, just tell me what's wrong, she whispered. The doctor's eyes softened, a small smile breaking the tension. You're pregnant, he said gently. Ava froze. The words didn't fully register at first. Her mind raced. Pregnant. Her hands trembled, pressed against her stomach. Her heart swelled with joy and fear at the same time. The consequences of this revelation were immediate. She thought of Dominic, ruthless, unyielding, unpredictable. Would he be furious, relieved, or distant as he had been tonight? The weight of the situation pressed down on her. She had lost him once tonight. Could she survive losing him while carrying his child? Questions tore through her mind, each one sharper than the last. Could she tell him? Would he come back for her if he knew? Or would his world of enemies, betrayal, and violence consume both of them before she had the chance? Ava sat in the sterile hospital room, hands trembling, stomach twisting, heart pounding. She realized life had changed irrevocably in just a few hours. Outside, the city continued its indifferent hum, unaware of the storm brewing in the life of one woman and the ruthless man who had loved her, yet sent her away to protect her, was already moving through the shadows, enemies plotting, betrayers conspiring, and Dominic, poised to strike, unaware of the new, fragile life now tethered to both of them. Ava closed her eyes, tears slipping freely. I'm pregnant, she whispered again, a single word, a single truth, and in that truth lay every hope, every fear, every future, and every danger. The world outside felt impossibly large, and yet, one fact was undeniable. Dominic had sent her away to save her life, but he had no idea the future he had created with her. Ava is pregnant, Dominic doesn't know, and with enemies closing in, betrayal in his empire, and a fragile life inside her, the stakes have never been higher. Ava didn't look back, not once, not even when the city's skyline once familiar and alive, disappeared behind the train window. The hum of the engine was the only sound keeping her grounded. Every mile away from Dominic was a mile into uncertainty, a mile into freedom, a mile into survival. She carried more than herself now. A fragile life grew quietly within her, a life that belonged to no one but her and the man who had broken and protected her in equal measure, and that life demanded a new identity, a new world, a new self. The apartment she rented in a foreign city was small but functional, white walls, stark lines, and no traces of the woman she had once been. Every decision she made was calculated. What she wore, who she contacted, where she ate. She was no longer Ava Carter of the shadows behind Dominic Knight. She was Ava, a woman who would survive, regardless of the monsters chasing her past. Days blended into nights. She poured herself into her work, building a fashion brand from the ground up. Every stitch, every sketch, every business call was a step further from her old life. Every sleepless night reminded her that she carried not just herself, but a child she would protect from the curses of the Knight name. The world didn't wait, opportunities arrived. Competition sharpened, and Ava adapted. Her brand began modestly, but her vision was anything but. Every show, every collection, every design carried whispers of her resilience, her creativity, and her pain. Lonely nights were inevitable. She would stare at the ceiling, imagining Dominic, his blue eyes, his hands, his voice. She hated him, she loved him, she feared him, and above all, she feared losing control over the life she now protected fiercely. Her assistant, loyal and discreet, became her confidant. She's unstoppable, one investor remarked after seeing her pitch a global expansion plan. Ava smiled faintly, lips tight, but in her mind, the smile was hollow. Her success wasn't just ambition, it was armor, armor for herself, and armor for the child growing inside her. Yet, despite her precautions, shadows lingered. Every call that went unanswered, every unfamiliar face in the crowd, every camera flash seemed loaded with threat. She never knew who watched, who followed, who planned. She couldn't risk love, not even friendship, not even trust, because every human connection was a possible leak to the enemies still loyal to Dominic, or worse, enemies who had only recently discovered her existence. Months passed. The belly she hid under tailored dresses became harder to conceal. Pregnancy had changed her, slowed her, strengthened her all at once. She felt the heartbeat of the child and swore she would never allow the Knight name to harm it. Her life became a web of strategy and timing. When to appear, where to go, how to disappear. The fashion industry demanded attention, glamour, cameras, critics, and crowds filled her world. But she saw the city and the people as numbers, threats, or opportunities. Nothing distracted her from her mission, surviving, thriving, and safeguarding her unborn child. Despite her reinvention, whispers of her past always trailed behind her. Agents, journalists, paparazzi, none suspected the truth. Yet she knew someone, somewhere, was tracking her every move. She felt it in the eyes that lingered too long, in shadows that didn't belong, in subtle movements that hinted at more than coincidence. The pinnacle of her empire was a fashion show in a historic theater. Her designs illuminated the runway. Every seat was filled with critics, journalists, celebrities, but she walked among them like a queen of a realm no one could touch. The adrenaline of performance masked the fear that always whispered at the edges of her mind. Backstage, she adjusted her dress, feeling the subtle weight of life against her body. The baby she had sworn to protect moved, tiny but insistent, reminding her of the stakes she carried. She closed her eyes, drew a deep breath, and smiled, the mask of perfection for the world. As she stepped onto the runway, the crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. She walked with the poise of a woman untouchable. Every design told a story of strength, resilience, and elegance forged in fire. But beneath the glittering lights, her instincts screamed danger. A moment of stillness, a heartbeat, and then she felt it. A tiny, almost imperceptible heat on her chest. Her breath caught. Her eyes flicked toward the ceiling, the corners, the shadows. A red dot glowed briefly on her chest. A sniper. Her heart thundered in her chest. Time slowed. Every flash of light, every clap of hands, every shutter of a camera was a heartbeat closer to death. And then, the dot vanished. As if it had never been there. Panic surged. Ava's body froze, mind racing. Someone had been ready to kill her, but they had waited, and then withdrawn. Her assistant noticed her sudden halt. "Miss Carter? Are you okay?" She nodded quickly, lips tight. "Yes. Just a little dizzy," but inside, she knew. This was no accident. She had rebuilt her life. She had grown strong, unbreakable, but even the strongest could be shaken. Backstage, she tried to steady her breathing. Her pulse raced. The threat wasn't random. Someone knew her patterns, her movements, her routines. Someone had waited until she was exposed, vulnerable, carrying life inside her. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Congratulations." But even kings fear what they cannot control. Ava's chest tightened. She recognized the tone, cold, calculated, dangerous. Her empire, her success, her child, none of it could protect her from the invisible predator watching, waiting, planning. She realized she had stepped into a trap, a world where power and ambition weren't enough to save her, where being brilliant, beautiful, and unbreakable might not be enough. The lights of the runway blurred. She could feel the baby's movements stronger, insistent, protective. Her resolve hardened. She would not be a victim. She would survive. She would fight. But the question remained. Who had the red dot on her chest? And how close were they? Ava walked off the runway, mask perfect, smile flawless, but inside, her heart raced with terror and determination. She had become unbreakable. Yes, but unbreakable didn't mean untouchable. The enemy was close, and the hunter had just revealed themselves. A red sniper dot appears on Ava's chest, then vanishes. Someone is tracking her, planning her death. Her unborn child, her life, and her empire are all at risk. The hospital corridor was silent except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Ava lay on the bed, her hands resting gently on her growing belly. The ultrasound screen flickered in front of her, displaying the tiny, miraculous life moving within. The sound of the heartbeat filled the room, strong, steady, insistent. Every beat made her chest tighten with awe and fear. This child was innocent, vulnerable, precious, and she was determined to protect it at all costs. Ava closed her eyes, imagining a life without Dominic, a life where she could shield the baby from the shadows of the Night Empire. She had done what she had to survive, grown, protected, but even now, in this sterile room, she felt a pang of longing for what could never be simple. And then the door slammed open. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Ava's heart leapt into her throat. She turned slowly, panic rising, as the figure of Dominic Knight filled the doorway. He didn't knock, he didn't apologize, he stormed in, eyes burning ice and fury, his presence filling every corner of the small room. Time seemed to freeze. Ava's breath caught. Dominic's gaze locked on the screen, unblinking, unrelenting. "That's my child," he whispered, voice low, shaking with a mix of disbelief, rage, and a strange tenderness that only she had ever witnessed. Ava recoiled slightly, pressing herself against the examination bed. "You left me with silence," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I left you with survival." Dominic's jaw tightened. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, gaze fixed on the flickering black and white image of their child, the life they had created together in secret. The monitor's steady beeps seemed to echo the tension in the room. Each one was a reminder of fragility. Each one was a reminder that this moment, beautiful as it was, existed in the middle of a war neither of them could escape. Ava tried to steady her breathing. She wanted to explain, to justify, to demand answers, but Dominic's presence made words falter, crumble, vanish entirely. Finally, he spoke, voice barely above a growl. You think I would let anything happen to this? To them? He gestured toward the screen. Ava flinched. I had to protect you, she whispered, her own voice raw. I had to make sure you came back to find me alive. And the baby? Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't look away. I'm stronger now. We both are. Dominic's blue eyes softened, just a fraction. Though the storm beneath them raged still, he reached a hand toward the screen, but his movements were hesitant, uncharacteristic. The world doesn't forgive weakness, he said quietly, but this. He gestured at the tiny figure pulsing on the screen. This changes everything. Ava's lips trembled. She wanted to believe him, but she had learned that in Dominic's world, love and danger were inseparable. Before words could continue, his phone buzzed, a sharp, insistent vibration against the metal counter. Dominic's hand shot out, grabbing the device mid-air. His eyes narrowed as he saw the screen, a photo. Ava's stomach dropped. Dominic's phone displayed an image she hadn't seen before. Herself, entering the hospital earlier that day, red target marks had been drawn on her belly over the very place where life stirred within her. Dominic's hand shook slightly as he scrolled through the image. Every muscle in his body tensed. A low, menacing growl escaped his throat, one that made Ava flinch instinctively. They're here, he whispered, his voice low but deadly. Someone tracked you. Someone knows you're carrying my child. Ava's hands clutched the edge of the bed. Fear surged through her, raw and undeniable. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about anger. This was a direct threat, and the consequences could be fatal. Dominic moved like a predator, fast, precise, coiling around the room, checking every angle, every door, every possible entry point. Ava watched, frozen, as the man she had once loved, feared, and depended on transformed into something terrifyingly singular. A protector willing to destroy anyone in his path. The hospital lights flickered as Dominic's phone buzzed again. Another message, a warning, a countdown of intent. Silent but deadly, Ava felt the panic clawing at her chest. For the first time, she realized that her careful reinvention, her unbreakable resolve, had not been enough. The shadow of the Night Empire and those who hated it had reached her, even here, in the place meant for healing. Life itself had become a battlefield. Dominic's hand gripped her shoulder, grounding her. Yet the force reminded her of his unyielding dominance. They want to use you against me, he said, voice rough. They think they can control me through my child. Ava's tears fell freely now. I can't, she whispered, trembling. You left me before. I can't survive another goodbye. Dominic's eyes softened fleetingly, just enough to break her heart all over again. I won't let that happen, he said, almost to himself. Not now. Not ever. He crouched beside her, placing a hand on her belly. The baby kicked lightly, responding to the tension, the fear, the presence of its father. Dominic's jaw clenched, teeth grinding almost audibly, and then a sudden, piercing realization struck him. The photo on his phone wasn't random. It was precise, planned. Someone had known the exact moment Ava would be vulnerable. Dominic's phone buzzed again. Another image appeared, this time closer, more detailed. The red targeting marks were accompanied by coordinates, the hospital wing, the room number. The enemy had traced her movement in real time. Ava's hands gripped his sleeve. She felt the fear, the rage, the determination radiating from him like fire. This was the man who had once sent her away to protect her, now arriving too late to prevent the threat, but ready to annihilate anyone who dared touch her. Dominic's blue eyes were icy, lethal, but beneath the rage, a storm of emotions raged. Regret, love, guilt, and an all-consuming need to protect. He looked at Ava, voice low but unwavering. You stay here. You do not move. I will handle this. Ava's lips trembled. You can't do this alone, she whispered. Dominic shook his head. I don't need anyone else. This ends tonight. He rose, phone in hand, fingers tightening around it until knuckles whitened. The monitors beeped the baby's heartbeat, every sound, every breath, every flicker of light became amplified. Charged with danger, outside, the city continued its indifferent hum, unaware of the war now raging within these hospital walls, and Ava realized with a sinking feeling that nothing, not distance, not reinvention, not strength could shield her from Dominic Knight when the world had chosen to strike at her and the life inside her. The final beep of the ultrasound faded into silence. A single thought dominated her mind. They knew everything. Dominic sees a photo of Ava in the hospital with red target marks on her belly. Someone knows the child exists and is planning an attack. Will Dominic save Ava in time? And who is behind this lethal tracking? The hospital erupted into chaos. Alarms blared, screams echoed down the sterile corridors, flashing red lights cast jagged shadows across Ava's terrified face. Dominic's hands were iron around her shoulders as he dragged her toward the emergency exit. Gunfire cracked, echoing like thunder, ricocheting off the walls. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. The world outside was a storm of bullets and betrayal. Ava clutched her belly instinctively, heart hammering. Her mind raced. She had thought she was safe here, at the one place meant for life, healing, protection, but Dominic's icy expression told her otherwise. Safety was an illusion, and he was the only one capable of creating it. Keep low, he shouted, voice fierce, commanding, the embodiment of dominance and desperation. Ava ducked instinctively as another volley of gunfire splintered the nearby wall. Shards of plaster rained down. Smoke filled the corridor. Who is she began, voice trembling, but Dominic cut her off with a sharp look, one that silenced everything. No questions. We move, now. They burst through the emergency doors into the night. Armored vehicles awaited, engines growling like caged predators. Dominic shoved her inside the first car, gun raised, scanning the perimeter. Ava scrambled into the seat, heart pounding, mind spinning with terror and confusion. He slid into the driver's seat, seatbelt snapping into place, hands gripping the wheel like a predator ready to strike. The vehicle surged forward, tires screeching against the asphalt as bullets pelted the metal around them. The city had become a battlefield. Dominic's voice was low, steady, but every word carried the weight of desperation. I never abandoned you, he said, eyes locked on the road, scanning shadows and corners. I was dismantling the traitors before they reached you. Ava's breath hitched. Then why they found you first, he snapped, voice tight with fury and regret. Because they are clever, patient, and cruel. And I failed. The car swerved sharply as another explosion erupted nearby. Glass shattered. Metal groaned. Ava's grip on her seat tightened. Knuckles white, every instinct screamed danger, every pulse begged for escape. Dominic's eyes flicked to her, stormy and intense. I never wanted you hurt, he said, voice trembling just slightly, a rare vulnerability breaking through his controlled fury. You are mine, and I failed to protect you. Not anymore. Ava's chest ached, a mixture of fear, longing, and confusion. You left me, she whispered, her words cut the night like a knife. You left me with nothing but silence. Dominic's jaw clenched. No, he growled. I left you with life, survival, the only thing that matters. His blue eyes were icy fire, burning through the chaos outside, through the smoke, through the gunfire. You are everything to me, and I won't lose you again. The car jolted violently as another shot struck the side. Ava screamed. Dominic swore under his breath, swerving sharply to avoid the next volley. The city outside became a blur of lights, smoke, and danger. They weren't just running, they were fighting. Every second was a life or death decision. Every movement could mean survival or annihilation. And then, without warning, a masked figure appeared in the side mirror. Ava's blood ran cold. The attacker was fast, relentless, precise. Before she could react, the figure lunged into the car. Hands grabbed her, pulling her violently from the seat. Ava screamed, kicking, thrashing. Panic overtaking her every thought, Dominic turned sharply, his roar filling the vehicle. Ava. The car swerved uncontrollably, metal screeched, tires lost traction, the armored vehicle skidded, slamming into another car, glass and metal twisting in a cacophony of chaos. Ava's hands clawed at the attacker's grip, but they were strong, trained, unyielding. She could feel the pull, the force dragging her away from the one person she had thought could protect her. Dominic's hands were everywhere at once, slamming the wheel, grabbing the attacker, yelling orders through gritted teeth. His fury was absolute, a hurricane of rage and desperation. Every movement was lethal, precise, calculated for one goal: save her. The impact of the crash threw them violently forward. Ava's head slammed against the seat, pain exploded in her skull, her vision blurred. The attacker's mask glinted under the streetlights, a mocking, cruel reflection. Dominic's voice cut through the haze, thunderous and commanding. "Let her go." The masked figure tightened their grip, and for a moment, time slowed. Every heartbeat, every breath, every flash of movement became magnified. Ava's entire world condensed to one horrifying fact: she could die here, tonight. In this instant, Dominic's body moved like a predator, muscles coiled, eyes blazing, voice a lethal promise. The car twisted and slammed again, glass shattering, sparks flying. His hand shot out, fingers locking on the attacker's wrist. The struggle became a violent ballet, metal groaning, screams echoing, the night alive with danger and fury. Ava fought too, but the attacker was relentless. Every instinct screamed survival, every heartbeat begged for rescue. And then the world tilted, the car hit the curb, spinning violently. A deafening crash echoed, metal folding, glass exploding. Ava's body was thrown forward, heart hammering, breath stolen. The masked figure's grip loosened for a fraction of a second. Dominic's voice was a raw, primal roar. "Ava." The moment stretched, suspended between life and death. Chaos surrounded them, gunfire, sparks, smoke, and shattered glass filled the air. The predator's mask glinted one last time before disappearing into the night. Ava's vision swam, pain radiated through every limb. Her fingers brushed Dominic's hand just as the vehicle came to a catastrophic halt. Metal twisted, lights flickered, and the city's chaos continued around them. Her body trembled, her heart raced, and Dominic's roar cut through the night. "I won't let anyone take you from me, not ever." The world outside seemed to pause, every breath, every heartbeat, every second held in suspension. Ava realized, in the wreckage and chaos, that she had survived, but the danger had not ended, not even close. And Dominic realized, with a shuddering fury that could ignite cities, that the traitors had planned far deeper than he had imagined. They hadn't just found her, they had chosen the moment, the place, the vulnerability, and now nothing could stop the storm about to descend on both of them. A masked attacker grabs Ava. Dominic screams her name as the armored car crashes. Will Dominic save her? And who is behind the relentless pursuit, planning to strike at the heart of both their lives? Ava's eyes fluttered open to dim, flickering light. Her wrists were raw, bound tightly with coarse rope, the sting of restraint mixing with bruises blooming on her skin. The chair beneath her was cold metal, unforgiving, echoing the harsh reality she now faced. The room smelled of dust, gun oil, and something metallic she couldn't identify. Her head throbbed, every beat of her heart amplifying the fear gnawing at her. For a moment, she felt the old panic rising, the helplessness she had once known, but she forced it down. No, not anymore. A door creaked open, and the light fell on a figure she knew too well, Adrian, Dominic's right-hand man. The man who had served loyally for years while harboring envy in silence. His eyes gleamed with malice, darkened by ambition. A crooked smile twisted his lips as he stepped closer, boots clicking against the concrete floor. Well, Adrian said, voice smooth but venomous. Look at you, Knight's treasure, all tied up. And here I thought Dominic would never let anyone get close enough to use you against him. Ava's stomach twisted at the words. Her instinct screamed danger. Her mind raced, analyzing, plotting, surviving. Your child, Adrian continued, stepping closer, letting his shadow fall across her body, will bring the empire to me. And you? He leaned down, face inches from hers. You'll watch it happen. Ava swallowed hard, the fear coiling tightly in her chest. Her mind flashed to the baby inside her, the fragile life that tied her to Dominic, to the world, to survival. She felt a surge of anger, of power, rising from somewhere deep within her. Adrian laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. You think you can stop me? He sneered. You're just a woman, a pawn, a mother with no control over what happens next. But Ava's hands brushed against the floor, searching desperately. Something glinted. A shard of broken glass, left from the crash. Sharp and dangerous, her fingers closed around it. Small but deadly in her grip, her mind sharpened, her heart beat steadily. Not with fear, but with determination. No longer naive, no longer obedient, she was a woman who fought. A mother who would defend her child at all costs. Adrian noticed the movement, his eyes narrowed. Calculating, you're playing a dangerous game, he warned, stepping closer. Knife in hand, Ava's muscles tensed. Her wrist ached from the rope, but she positioned the shard just right. Sawing slowly against her restraints, pain shot through her skin as the fibers gave way. But she didn't flinch. Each inch of freedom was a victory. Each movement a silent rebellion. You underestimate me, she muttered under her breath. Teeth gritted. The woman Adrian thought he had captured was gone. In her place was someone sharper, faster, unyielding. The ropes finally snapped. Ava's wrists bled, but her hands were free. Her eyes locked on Adrian. For the first time, she saw him hesitate. Recognition that the naive girl he thought he had under control had become a force to be reckoned with. Adrian's smirk faltered. You've changed, he admitted, voice tight with irritation. Ava only smiled faintly, a dangerous curve of lips. Blood and defiance mixed together. She lunged first, blade flashing in the dim light, cutting, slashing, moving with a precision born of desperation and survival. Adrian stumbled back, surprised, his confidence cracking. You think fear controls me? Ava hissed. Her voice was low, dangerous, deadly. No, I control my fear, and I'll use it to burn everything you love to the ground if you touch me or my child. Adrian's grip on his knife tightened. He circled her, eyes wild, calculating the threat, sizing her up, but she was no longer prey. Every breath she took, every step she moved, radiated lethal determination. And then gunshots, sharp, deafening, echoing through the abandoned warehouse. The bullets tore through the walls, splintering wood and sending dust into the air. Adrian flinched, eyes wide with confusion. Ava's head snapped toward the sound. Her heart pounded. The instinctive knowledge that help had arrived surged through her. Dominic burst through the doorway, blue eyes blazing, body tense, every movement radiating fury and power. His gaze locked on her, assessing, protective, consuming. Ava's chest swelled with relief and terror at once, but the relief was fleeting. Adrian, sensing his advantage slipping, pressed the knife against Ava's throat. The steel bit into her skin just enough to draw a drop of blood. Ava froze. Breath caught. Dominic's eyes widened in horror, rage boiling over. Ava, he roared, voice echoing like thunder. The sound vibrated through the room, through the dust, through the tension like an explosion. Ava's hands moved instinctively, trying to twist free, trying to protect the baby, trying to survive. Every heartbeat screamed danger, every second stretched, suspended between life and death. Dominic's muscles coiled, ready to strike. Every nerve in his body screamed kill or save. No hesitation, no mercy. Adrian laughed, cruel and taunting, testing the limits of Dominic's control. The room was silent except for the shallow breaths of the trapped, the metallic scrape of the knife against skin, and the distant echo of gunfire from the outside. Time slowed, every movement amplified. Dominic's hand moved lightning fast. Gripping the barrel of the gun at his side, he fired a shot not at Adrian, but at the wall behind him, splintering it into a cloud of dust and wood. The distraction was enough to force Adrian's grip to falter slightly. Ava's shard of glass cut deeper into her palm, but she gritted her teeth, thrusting forward, slicing the rope around her waist, pushing against Adrian with every ounce of strength. Adrian hissed. Losing balance, Dominic lunged, sweeping him aside with brutal force, but the knife still pressed against Ava's neck. A hair's breadth from disaster, Ava's pulse raced, her breathing shallow, ragged. She met Dominic's gaze, eyes fire, an unspoken promise. He was hers, her protector, her storm. The chaos intensified. Adrian scrambled, trying to regain control. Ava ducked, twisted, moved with speed born of terror and defiance. Dominic's hands were everywhere, grabbing, restraining, protecting. The room became a whirlwind of violence, tension, and desperate survival. Ava realized she was no longer helpless. She was a warrior, a mother, a survivor, and together, with Dominic by her side, they were a force. Adrian had underestimated, a force he would soon regret. But the danger wasn't over. Gunfire, shadows, and lethal intent still hung heavy in the air. Adrian's smirk was gone, replaced by panic and rage. Dominic's jaw tightened, eyes blazing. Ava pressed close to him, bloodied but unbroken. Her heart pounded in sync with the chaos around them. The baby kicked insistently, reminding her of the stakes, the fragile life that tied them to this deadly dance. Adrian lunged again, desperate, reckless, and Dominic's roar filled the room. No. Time slowed, each second stretching into eternity. Every heartbeat, every movement, every breath carried the weight of life and death. And then a deafening shot rang out from outside. Adrian froze. Dominic's gaze flicked to the sound, but the knife was still at Ava's throat. The world held its breath. Gunshots echoed. Dominic bursts in, but Adrian presses a knife to Ava's throat. The life of Ava and her unborn child hangs by a thread. Will Dominic save her, or will Adrian's betrayal claim them both? The warehouse trembled with tension, silence fractured only by the shallow, sharp breaths of those trapped within its concrete walls. Ava's hands still bore the faint sting of her struggle, blood from the shard cutting her palm. But her eyes were fierce, sharp, unyielding. She stared at Adrian, at the knife pressed against her neck, her pulse hammering like a drum in a battlefield. Dominic's gaze never left her. Burning with ice and fire, he assessed every angle, every possible move, every fraction of a second. He had trained his body, honed his instincts, prepared for a war he had known was coming. But nothing had prepared him for the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Adrian smirked, arrogance oozing from every movement. You've brought your king, but your queen is mine, he hissed, knife trembling slightly, betraying his growing unease. You can't save her. You can't save what's coming. Dominic stepped closer, hands raised, calm yet lethal. A predator coiled and ready to strike. Let her go, he commanded, voice low, dangerous, as cold as steel. The word echoed, a promise, a threat, a declaration all at once. Ava's breath caught. She realized the depth of Dominic's sacrifice, the life he was willing to risk, the fury he had restrained until the perfect moment. You don't have to do this alone, she whispered, voice trembling but steady, heart roaring in defiance. I'm here. We fight together. Dominic's eyes flickered to her, shock and admiration mingling with the fury in his gaze. Ava's courage, born of desperation and love for her child, threw Adrian off balance. A second too long, a moment too perfect. Dominic seized it. The movement was lightning quick, practiced, precise. His hand drew a gun in one fluid motion, aimed with absolute certainty. A single shot rang out. Adrian's eyes widened in disbelief. The knife slipped from his grasp. His smirk vanished, replaced by a flash of panic. He stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder. But his body reacted too late. A second shot erupted from Dominic's gun, forcing Adrian further back. Metal screeched beneath their feet. The warehouse seemed to shrink, the world collapsing to this single violent confrontation. But Adrian wasn't finished. Even as he fell, he fired one last desperate shot. A searing pain exploded across Dominic's chest. Ava screamed. Her hands flew instinctively to him, pressing against the wound, feeling the life bleed from him. Her vision blurred with fear, anger, and disbelief. Blood spread, dark and undeniable, soaking into Dominic's crisp shirt, staining the battle with life and death. Dominic's breath came shallow, ragged, but his blue eyes never left hers. Every second was agony, every heartbeat a reminder of fragility. I'm fine, he whispered, voice strained, yet unconvincing. You're not fine, Ava shouted, tears spilling freely. Her hands shook, fingers pressed desperately against his wound. You promised. Dominic's lips quirked faintly, a shadow of humor beneath the storm of pain. Promises are only as strong as the man keeping them, he rasped. His hand gripped hers briefly. A silent vow, a tether between their hearts. Even as his life ebbed, Adrian groaned from the floor, cursing, clutching his shoulder, eyes wild with hatred and disbelief. You won't win, he spat. You'll die here. Dominic's jaw clenched, every muscle coiled in defiance, pain radiating through him like fire. I don't die for anything less than her safety, he whispered, voice hoarse but resolute. He forced himself upright, hands steadying the gun, eyes fixed on the man who had betrayed him. Ava's chest heaved with terror. She had never seen him like this, vulnerable, yet unrelenting, a force that refused to bend even under the weight of blood and pain. Her child kicked inside her womb, a tiny heartbeat sinking with the chaos, reminding her that survival wasn't just for them, it was for this new life, innocent and untouched. Adrian roared, fury and desperation intertwining. He lunged again, knife trembling in his grasp, a final act of defiance. But Dominic's reflexes, sharpened by years of violence, were flawless. Another shot, Adrian's body crumpled to the floor, the knife clattering harmlessly across the concrete. The momentary victory was hollow. Dominic's chest still bled, life seeping away faster than he wanted, faster than Ava could bear to watch. Ava pressed closer, tears streaking her face, voice cracking with raw panic. Dominic, stay with me. Don't you dare leave me. Dominic's fingers brushed her cheek, tracing it lightly, a fleeting touch of tenderness in a storm of blood and violence. I will always be with you, he whispered, voice fading, pulse weakening. Always. The warehouse seemed to close in around them. Shadows flickered on walls, the echo of gunfire and gun smoke lingering. Ava's sobs echoed, mingling with the distant hum of the city outside. Indifferent to the violence within, her hands pressed desperately against his chest, feeling the life drain away. Don't you leave me, she screamed, voice hoarse, raw, broken, but fierce. Her tears fell freely, mixing with blood, fear, and unrelenting love. Dominic's blue eyes locked on hers, the storm of pain, love, and regret burning in their depths. He tried to speak, to reassure, to promise, but his voice faltered, his pulse, once strong, now slowed, fading beneath the weight of his injury. Ava shook him, fingers clawing at his shoulders, lips pressed to his ear. You can't die. Not now. Not like this. Dominic's eyes fluttered, trying to hold on. Every heartbeat was a battle, every breath was a struggle, and every second passed too slowly, stretching into eternity. Adrian groaned on the floor, bloodied and broken, but still alive enough to curse and threaten. Ava's fury rose, sharper than fear, hotter than pain. Her hands gripped whatever she could, shards, steel, anything ready to defend Dominic and the life growing inside her. Dominic's body trembled, blood spread across the floor, life wavered, a fragile flame flickering in the storm. Ava's screams filled the warehouse, raw and piercing, cutting through the chaos. Help! Someone help us! Her voice carried the weight of despair and love. Fear and rage intertwined. It echoed against concrete walls, ricocheted off steel beams, refusing to be ignored. Time slowed. Every heartbeat, every breath, every flicker of life suspended in brutal clarity. Dominic's hand brushed against hers one final time. Always. Ours, he whispered, barely audible. The pulse in his neck faded, each beat weaker, slipping closer to silence. Ava's eyes widened, terror overwhelming every thought. Her body shook violently. She refused to let go, refused to surrender, refused to accept the impossible, but the world around them continued to turn. Indifferent, violent, and unforgiving. Dominic's pulse fades as Ava screams for help. Will he survive the bullet wound? Will Ava protect their child? And will the Empire's betrayal claim the man she loves most? The world was quiet, almost shockingly so. Sterile white walls and faint beeping monitors replaced the chaos, the gunfire, and the violence that had defined the past hours. Dominic Knight's eyelids fluttered, heavy with pain. Every breath a battle. The sharp sting in his chest reminded him that life was fragile, more fragile than he had allowed himself to feel for years. Dominic. Ava's voice trembled, soft yet steady, grounding him in a reality he hadn't dared to imagine again. He tried to speak, lips barely moving. His throat burned, pain surged, dragging him into consciousness. And the first thing he saw, the first thing he felt was her presence. A constant he had believed lost forever. She stood above him, small yet formidable, holding something against his chest. A fragile, trembling smile lifted her lips. "This is what you protected," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. She pressed a sonogram image into his trembling hands. "The first glimpse of our child. Your child. Our future." Dominic's fingers closed around the picture, trembling. Every line, every shadow, every tiny curve of the image was a promise he hadn't realized he needed, a reminder of life he hadn't thought he deserved. Tears welled in his piercing blue eyes. "You almost died protecting us," Ava said softly, but with the weight of every fear, every night she had endured alone. "That's the Dominic I loved. The man beneath the storm, beneath the fear, beneath the Empire." Dominic's hand sought hers, fingers curling around hers with trembling strength, the kind of strength earned through blood, loss, and unwavering love. I will spend my life," he rasped, voice raw, "earning the right to stay beside you." Her thumb brushed over his knuckles, steadying him, anchoring him to life. Her eyes met his, fierce, unyielding, a reflection of every moment they had survived together and every battle they had yet to face. Outside, distant sirens wailed, the relentless approach of justice in the form of the FBI closing in on the Night Empire. Ava's gaze sharpened. She knew the world had shifted again, that their lives were still danger-laced, unpredictable, unrelenting, but she also knew something else. "We rebuild our world," she said firmly, her voice steady as steel. "From zero. Together." Dominic nodded slowly, letting her words settle like fire and ice through his bones. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss not born of passion, but of survival, trust, and forgiveness. A silent vow passed between them. No words could encompass the weight of the lives they had endured and the life they had yet to build. Ava leaned down, close enough to feel his ragged breath, close enough to see the depth of battle etched into his every line, every scar. Their eyes locked, speaking the language they had shared through nights of terror, danger, and the impossible tension of forbidden love. Outside, the world waited, indifferent to the fragile hearts within the hospital walls. The sirens grew louder. The world they had known, the Empire, the betrayal, the war was closing in. Yet for the first time, Dominic and Ava felt a fragile, unshakable hope. The baby inside her stirred, tiny kicks against the ribs, reminding them of what they had fought for, what they had endured, what they had survived. Dominic traced a finger along her abdomen, feeling life itself pulsing, a heartbeat entwined with both of them. Ava's lips curved into a small, fierce smile. "Together," she whispered, affirming the promise they had silently pledged in blood. Fire and survival, always. Dominic's eyes glimmered, the storm within him softening just enough to show a man reborn through love, through vulnerability, through the tiny life that represented everything worth protecting. "We always survive," he murmured, voice hoarse but steady, pressing his forehead against hers. They kissed again. Slower this time, not the fevered kiss of lust or the reckless hunger of forbidden desire. This was a kiss of endurance, of life, of forgiveness, the merging of broken pasts into a fragile but unbreakable future. The door to the hospital room creaked, a shadow shifted in the corner. Ava froze, hands tightening around Dominic's, instinctive, protective. Dominic's senses sharpened, instinct flaring like fire beneath the calm. He scanned the room, the walls, the corners, everything, every shadow, every sound, and then he saw it, Adrian, bloodied, bruised, but unmistakably alive. He had survived, hidden, watching, waiting. His eyes glinted with cold amusement as he leaned back against the hospital bed he had somehow found. "The empire will belong to the child," he said, voice soft but venomous, a smirk curling on his lips. One way or another. Ava's heart skipped, Dominic's jaw clenched. The room, filled with the fragile peace of survival, suddenly vibrated with the threat of new war. Adrian's presence was a razor-edged promise the battle was far from over. Dominic's hand gripped hers, fingers locking like steel, strength returning with controlled fury. He stood, eyes meeting Adrian's, blue fire against cold malice. "You want the empire?" he growled, voice low, deadly. "You'll have to kill all of us to get it." Ava pressed herself closer, a shield and anchor, both fierce and tender. Her child's life, their lives, and their future were at stake, and together, she and Dominic were ready. Adrian's smirk widened, calculating. "Dangerous? You think you can protect everything?" he asked, voice mocking, almost playful in its cruelty. "You've only survived the beginning." Dominic's pulse, recovering but steady, radiated lethal intent. "You've underestimated us before," he said, eyes narrowing, cold and precise. "This time, you'll regret it." The sirens outside crescendoed, the storm of law and empire drawing closer, promising chaos. The future was uncertain, dangerous, and unforgiving, but Ava and Dominic, united, unbroken, and fiercely alive, would face it together. Their hands remained locked, their gazes entwined, and the baby's tiny heartbeat thumped in sync with the tension of the room. A fragile but unshakable rhythm. Outside, the world waited, Adrian waited, the empire waited, and in the heart of the hospital room, amidst blood, survival, and the whispered promises of a future reborn, the war for love, the ultimate test of loyalty, trust, and survival, was only beginning. A recovered Adrian smirks from a hidden hospital bed. "The empire will belong to the child. One way or another, the war for love, vengeance, and survival isn't over." Even as Dominic, Ava, and their unborn child cling to life and hope,